So today is podcast number one with Maximillian Fox and Matt Griffith. And basically, we're going to be talking about what is a global citizen and probably going to be off topic a lot. So, because we've been friends for a while and we just talk about a lot of different things. So, Max, good to see you again. It's
Good to
been a
see
couple
you.
of days. So yeah, and for anybody that sees this, Max and I, we basically have almost everything in common. I'm a pilot, he's a pilot. Uh, it doesn't matter. The hobbies, if I'm thinking about a hobby, he's doing it. If he's thinking about a hobby, I'm probably doing it. So it's just we kind of read each other's minds. So and we're both digital nomads. But actually we met traveling years ago. So anyway, and we both own software companies. So you were the one that came up with the topic, what it is to be a digital nomad. That being said, what's your definition of it?
I think I think a digital nomad and a global citizen are different, but they overlap. So I think a digital nomad is somebody that earns their money through technology, usually the internet. And because of that, they take the opportunity of being location independent to see the world, whether that's several locations or that's all over the place. That's a digital nomad to me. A global citizen is somebody that's really moving around the world in the same way somebody might move around their state or their individual country, because I think it does give you a unique and different perspective. And there are different norms and, you know, culture for people that are in that space.
Well, and I think you and I've talked about this before. I think that whether you're a digital nomad or global citizen, I think it makes you, I think global travel makes you a better human because you get to see different cultures. You realize your culture isn't the only culture.
Mhm.
And so, um, and I kind of think both of us fall under that global citizen and digital nomad because we both make our money uh, digitally, but at the same time, um, we both are all over the world at any different time. I mean, all the times that when we check in on each other, it's like uh, I might be in Colombia, you might be in Dubai, or you're in Colombia and I'm in Europe or something. So it's we're all over the place.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it does make you. I think it makes friendships better because it doesn't make them reliant on repetition, right, or familiarity. It's more of this is a friend. It can be 1 week, it could be 1 month, but you still have that relationship, that bond. So I think that's good. But it's not for everybody. I think, most people are used to having their tribe. And I think for a lot of digital nomads and global citizens, your tribe is going to look much different than the tribe of somebody that maybe is not.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Yeah, because the same I think is true for me. I have my friends that I've known for years that are in North Carolina. But I also have my global friends
Yeah.
that I've met in different countries, or I've met kind of like yourself and traveling. Because yeah, you and I met, gosh, I'm gonna say about 5 years ago in a restaurant.
Yeah.
Uh,
In Bogota.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, and you were basically sitting at a table. I was sitting at a table, so at a different table, and I heard you speaking English, and we just struck up a conversation and started talking, and been friends ever since.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Then you came up to Miami.
yeah.
I see you again in
Hey, you were doing like
Colombia.
you were because you were at a crypto conference in Miami. I came up
And
there to just basically end up chatting with you. I didn't go to the conference, but you did.
yeah,
Uh, and yeah, so yeah, that's yeah. And then yeah, I guess what 2 months ago maybe you came and hung out with me in Bogota. Um, so and yeah, right now, um, yeah, I'm talking to you from Madrid, Spain right now.
mhm. Yeah,
So
I'll be back in the States for a little bit, and then I got to figure out what I'm doing for the fall and winter, at least for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Europe's not out of the question, um, but yeah, I think the only part of the world I really haven't gotten to make feel like home is Asia, which maybe next year.
so yeah, and we've talked. I'm headed to Nomad Capitalist Live in September in Malaysia. That'll be my first time ever stepping foot in Asia.
Hmm.
So that'll be new to me. You've at least been to Dubai and uh, uh, a few other places, so you've at least have a little more experience there than I do.
Yeah, yeah, it is from a digital nomad perspective. You know, you hear people talk a lot about Western culture, and Dubai was probably my first foray into a city that was truly outside Western culture. And it is different. It does feel different. Different but familiar. You know, at the end of the day, we're all people, and most people
Yeah,
are trying to do the same basic things. But the difference in culture you can definitely feel, and I think it's really interesting. Um, you know, I think one of the things that was interesting to me is a lot of the preconceptions that people may have about Dubai and people there and in people that part of the world are very inaccurate. And so, yeah, I think if I've learned anything from traveling, it's that whatever you're told about a group of people, don't believe it until you go experience it. And that doesn't
I'm
mean
100%. Yeah,
you know, be there for a week at a resort or a hotel. It means like you probably got to be there for a month and really go talk to people, be out in the street to see what the culture is actually like.
yeah. I 100% agree with that because I liked what you said just a second ago. You said people are just people, and I don't care where you go in the world. It's you know, I think a lot of times we're polarized by what we hear about governments in different parts of the world, and governments aren't necessarily people. Um, and the people, sometimes the people don't agree with their governments, and um, I don't know, the people. I mean, like a perfect example. Growing up in the United States, we always heard that Cuba was, you know, that Cuba was really bad. And when I went to Cuba for the first time, those are the nicest people I think I've ever met in my life.
Right.
And uh, and I really, and as an American, a lot of people think they can't go to Cuba, and they can actually. There's just a pathway that they have to do, but there's flights right out of Miami every day that go to Cuba. You just uh, have to. There's I don't know what the methods are now. I think there was when I went there were you had to pick one of 12 reasons to go. I think they've eliminated one or two of those reasons, but it doesn't matter. You still can go.
Yeah.
And but honestly, again, people are just people, and yeah, yeah, I definitely like that what you said that on that because that's my experience.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, you know, people have different ideas about how to go about getting the things they want, right? But generally, most people just want to live their lives, be left alone, you know, have a family, or just do their own thing. Again, people have different ideals on how to accomplish that, but at the end of the day, most people that's all they want to do and eat good food.
Yeah,
Now, you know, that can be a little more contentious because everybody has different ideas of what's good food, and you know, maybe they think their people make the best version of something. But I'm always happy to try out everybody's version of a dish and figure out which one's the best.
You and me both.
Yeah,
It's
I
why I'm
think
always 20 pounds or 10 kilos overweight.
yeah, I think the entire Middle East, almost every culture thinks they invented baklava. And I don't know who did, but I have yet to have somebody's version of baklava that I was upset about.
I know. I
So
agree with that. I have a friend that owns a Lebanese restaurant in the United States, and he's
Mhm.
like, the Lebanese created it. And then I know another guy in Germany that owns a Turkish restaurant. He's like, no, we invented it. So it's I have no idea, and I'm not even sure what Wikipedia says. But yeah, baklava. Now again, it's very rich, so you can only do like a little small bite, like the small size of it. But yeah, I love
Yeah.
baklava.
Oh, I'm not trying to sample them all at once, but uh, and I'll try them out. Yeah, that's most people. Most people want the same thing. I think travel, and the other thing I've noticed is most people are excited to learn about other parts of the world, right? I think especially with the internet, people have become wiser and realize that what they're told or what they see isn't always necessarily the truth. And so, again, there are definitely dangerous places in the world, but most places, if you walk around and you're nice, people are nice back, and you can sit down and have a conversation with somebody almost anywhere because they're as
Yeah.
excited to hear from you as you are from them.
Yeah. Well, and like even where you and I had met in Bogota, Colombia originally. Um, Colombia, I have friends. I bet this is, I bet you had the same experience I have. I have friends and family that are like, you're in Colombia? Are you safe? And I'm like, okay, Pablo Escobar has been dead for 40 years. Um, it is not that Colombia anymore. 40 years ago, it was one of the most dangerous countries in the world. And now it's arguably safer than the United States.
Yeah. Um, I visited St. Louis for a little bit before I came here the first time. And I felt much safer walking around Medellin than I did in St. Louis. Now, are there bad parts of Medellin? Sure. But, generally, I haven't had, knock on wood, one single problem here. And I know some people's experiences are different, but I don't think I'm, the most socially intelligent person. I'm probably about average, but I've just used common sense and, I've had my fair share of late nights out here. I've never had a problem. And I have Colombian friends and foreign friends. I've gone to Colombian places and places that you only really see expats. I've never really had an issue.
Yeah. I mean, you take any US city and there's the good side of town and the bad side of town. Um, I lived in Greensboro, North Carolina for a really long time, and Greensboro has the good side of town and the bad side of town.
Right.
Um, and the same, yeah. So like what you said, like I have where you haven't had something. I've had a phone stolen in Bogota. Uh,
Mhm.
Two guys on a motorcycle came up on the sidewalk. I was waiting for my Uber, had my phone out in my hand, and they have a saying, "Don't give papaya," and
Right.
that's true in anywhere in the world, But I had it out in my hand, and I had just this was during COVID when you had to have a COVID test before you could enter the U.S. And I was flying back, and I had to get my COVID test the day before, and so I had my phone waiting for the Uber to come pick me up from the testing center. And two guys on a motorcycle, the guy on the back just literally grabbed it out of my hand.
Yeah.
But that's basically my experience of Colombia. If there's going to be something it's not confrontational. It's it's a you've held something out, and a motorcycle has done it. They tend to be nonviolent people.
Yeah.
Um, and then, in the case of the United States, if you're maybe in the bad side of Detroit or New York City, it could have a gun or a knife or something instead. So
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, Newark, New Jersey, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but if you go out there after dark, then they're probably going to rob you. There'll probably be a gun or knife involved, and it'll be a lot more than your phone.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So,
so yeah, there are dangerous parts of the city, of a town anywhere.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I honestly, I feel far more comfortable in Colombia, in any city in Colombia, than I do in any big city in the United States late at night.
yeah,
So
there's some. I think I haven't been in a while, but Salt Lake City was impossibly clean. Uh, I mean,
I could see
if I
that
got
though.
robbed there, it would feel like I was part of a movie, right? Like, oh, this is just a movie set. Like somebody call cut. But yeah, there are a lot of American cities where I agree, like Miami, Houston, parts of Dallas, where yeah, after dark, I'm you're not gonna catch me out there.
Yeah. Well, even Los Angeles. I've been in parts of Los Angeles at night, and I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be out at this time. And
Mm.
I've been in Eastern Europe, uh, the Czech Republic, Romania, in Budapest, and I've been out late at night. I haven't felt scared at all.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's just it's a it's different.
yeah. Prague's a beautiful city, but
Prague
I
is awesome.
agree.
Yeah. Prague is one
Yeah,
of my top five favorite cities in the world.
you're a beer drinker.
I love Prague. Yeah, Prague is fantastic. And yeah, Prague. I don't know. I think Prague and Budapest are
Mm.
probably two of my favorite cities, international cities. They're
Yeah,
in my
I've
top.
never been to Budapest, but I want to visit there in Krakow. I
Yeah,
haven't spent too much time in Eastern Europe, but I would like to. Um, yeah, Eastern Europe and Asia, I definitely need to spend more time in. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I most of the cities I've visited, I do feel a lot safer. Um, and I think some of that goes back to culture, right? So with the US, at least in my experience, we're much more individualistic, right? Which definitely has its pros. But in a lot of other cultures, it seems people are more collective. And so I think that influences crime because, for example, in Colombia, I was hiking a mountain and the entrance is in the middle of a neighborhood and it was getting kind of dark. I was with some Colombian friends and I was like, hey, it's sun's getting kind of low and I'm not from around here. Is it okay if I'm here? And they were like, oh, yeah, because all of the shopkeepers there rely on people. They get business from foot traffic, people hiking up the mountain. So if somebody was to rob somebody or do something bad, they're going to the neighborhood, beat them up, and then call the cops. Because
yeah,
if something bad happens, less people are coming and less foot traffic, and that hurts the neighborhood, right?
right.
And so, everybody's still doing their own thing, but they still have this community concept there where, hey, this is our community. The shop owners live in the community. The people that run the businesses live in the community. So something bad happens in the community, that's bad for us.
Yeah,
And so I think that's the difference that you see in America in a lot of places. Because you don't have that community anymore. Um, and
yeah.
so
The United
it's
States has
changed.
really changed since I was a kid. Um, it's interesting. As a kid, I remember the neighbors would be outside a lot. And then I know in the past 20 years, it's like wherever I've lived in the United States, people would basically park in their driveway, go and immediately get out of their car and go inside, and you wouldn't see them anymore.
Yeah.
And that wasn't like it was when I was a kid. People would sit outside. There was, neighbors would do things together, and it doesn't seem like it seems like that's a disconnect now in the United States. I don't know if they're, maybe there's more streaming services, Netflix and stuff like that now, and they're binge watching. I have no idea. I don't know what the reason for that is, but like, yeah, like what you were saying. um I lived in a for a short while. I think actually you came to my place when I lived there. I lived in a part of Bogota called Rio Negro.
Hmm.
Wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst. It was Colombia does things on what they call stratums, stratums 1 through 6.
Yep.
And the last place you came and visited me was in Santa Barbara. I lived in a stratum 6, which was the max. I lived in the really nice area. But when you first came and visited me years ago, I lived in stratum 3, or no, it was, yeah, stratum 3. So, but I loved, and by the way, for anybody who's watching that doesn't understand that, stratum 3 basically decides what your utilities are going to cost. Also, the vegetable markets tend to be a little less expensive in a lower stratum than a higher stratum. So, like when I lived in the stratum 6, um, a tomato and onions and things like that are going to cost a little more than they did at the vegetable market at the other. And but like some guys were pushing in an old car. It was an old Mercedes, like probably like a '60s model. It didn't have an engine in it. They had painted it. It was a paint shop, and it was starting to rain, and so they were trying to push it in with no engine. So they're just having to push in essentially a shell of a car.
Hmm.
And I I'd been to the grocery shop, and I put down my groceries and helped them push it in. They were thankful for me helping them. And so from that moment on, every time I passed by there, they would always wave to me. I was the gringo. And when I go into the vegetable markets, I'd always ask like the people I'd see every time I go what their name was. And then I would say hi to them. And it's kind of like the same thing. I feel like if anybody ever tried to do anything to me, those people would stand up for me
Yeah.
because they were my friends, even though they only knew me as acquaintances. So I always felt safe there. I've never not felt safe there. And then of course, living in Santa Barbara, it's more posh in Bogota, which
Hmm.
anybody watching this would be like, Bogota posh. So
Yeah.
yeah, but the restaurant
Well,
scene in Bogota is awesome.
well, I mean, I think people don't realize Bogota is about the same population as New York, but it's a
It
larger
is.
city. So it's
Yeah.
not, it's a world city. And there are beautiful places to live and not so nice places.
Yeah.
The stratas go from 1 to 6, so there's a lot of range there. I've also experienced that community feeling in here specifically. So the current place I'm living, I had a longer term lease. And so I found the place on Airbnb. So I was here for about a month, and I started talking to the person about, a longer term lease. And so it took a couple days to get back to me. And he said, yeah, that would be great. And then he told me, oh, I talked to the neighbors and they said you were really nice and, you'd be a good addition to the building. And I didn't think anything of it, but, when I was there going up in the elevator, lady with her groceries, oh, ¿cómo estás? Um, so help her with a bag or just saying hi to everybody. People notice that because it's a community. There is no, I'm going to get to my car and then go upstairs and not talk to anybody on the elevator or just go in the door. People notice if you aren't friendly or, you're doing maybe questionable things in your apartment, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a double-edged sword. If you're not being a positive part of the community, you'll find out. If you are, people are very nice. Um, and so, because I was, and it's simple things like just being friendly, just saying hi, right? Part of the reason I got my apartment, because the landlord knew based on the community, oh, this is a good person. So, yeah, it's little things like that that make a huge difference. And yeah, I see that more and more outside the US.
Yeah. Well, I think that the things I've noticed, in the US, making friends, there's almost a wall, that
Mm-hmm.
you kind of get sized up. Do you, um, should we be talking to each other, because are we in the same class and things like that, and that happens in Europe as well. To me, I don't feel like that exists in anywhere in Latin America or anywhere on the continent of Africa. It's like Latin America and Africa are poorer. So I feel like they've left out that component of do we need this component to be friends? Whereas,
Mm, mhm.
I feel like in North America and Europe, that component exists. Like we make better money in these countries, and I feel like I've got friends all over Latin America, and I've got friends throughout Africa that are. It's like that component doesn't exist. They're your friend because they just want to be your friend. Um,
I don't know. I've seen differently because one of the things I think it's not a hobby, but I think I'm just more conscious of it, is the differences between cultures.
yeah,
Um, and so it's always something I'm looking at when I go to a new place because I'm curious, right? Like, what are all the different variations that people live under? So, in a lot of, if not all, the Latin American countries I've visited, there is definitely a social hierarchy. Now,
yeah,
is it maybe a little more subtle? Sure. But I think one, it's subtle for us because we're outsiders, right? So automatically, unless you're really trying to really be a terrible part of the culture, you're going to be at the higher level just by being a foreigner, 9 times out of 10, right? Um, and so I think part of that is, they assume you have a lot of money. And I think also you're novel. And so there are two things I think I've seen consistently. One, in most Latin American countries, there are somewhere between 9 to 15 families that own everything, right? And so if you ask the average person there, they can name more than half of them, like off the top of their head, right? You don't even
yeah.
have to dig
Well, you
deep.
do have like the Post Bono family or Post Bono. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correct, but in Colombia that makes the sodas. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely see that. Um, but yeah, I just feel like I don't know. I just feel like it's like even and I agree with you on the sense of the that social hierarchy in the sense like me living in a stratum 3. While I lived in Bogota, I lived in a stratum 3, then a 4, then a 6,
Mhm.
and there is a little the 3 and the 4. There's really no difference, but the 6, you're living with the wealthier people in Colombia.
Mhm.
So I think there is a little difference between themselves, but like I guess as us as Americans, yeah, I would agree with you on that. As Americans or as foreigners, whether we're Americans or anything else, we are kind of a novelty to them. So they do um I guess we fall into that status where they're interested.
Yeah. So I think we get I don't want to say everybody's on their best behavior, but everybody's really friendly, whereas they wouldn't always be that friendly to other people. Now, is their baseline friendliness and openness higher than we might see in a lot of places in America? Sure. But there's definitely still a hierarchy, at least in all the countries I've been to, Latin American countries. Um, and I think again if you spend a little more time or you're consciously looking for it, you'll see it. Or you can just ask. So yeah, at least in Colombia, the way I was aware of it was I asked because I thought it was weird that there would be stratas. Like it's such an important concept that they codify it, right? But everybody seems really friendly. And
Yeah.
so I was sitting with a friend with eating some tacos, and I asked about it, and they were like, "Yeah, it's a little different for you because you're not from around here, but there are definitely classes here, and it'll be small things like, um, you won't see certain types of Colombians in certain parts of the city normally. right? Or it may be harder for them to get a table. Um, but there are definitely hierarchies. And then the other place it was very apparent was Argentina. So, um, still very nice, but if you look, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like, my experiences in Colombia, in the stratums 4, 5, and 6 is where your better restaurants are. You have more
Oh yeah.
international restaurants. And, stratums 1 through 3, you're going to probably not find a sushi place. You're probably going to find a traditional Colombian restaurant with rice, beans, and fried plantains and whatever protein they give you. Um, and so yeah, I do see differences in that. And yeah, of course the apartments, housing, all of that costs less in the less stratum. So and I guess in some senses, I guess that's really kind of because your utilities are less. In some senses, that's socialized. Um, and I always feel like that word, people don't understand that word. It's like because if you hear people say, well, from the United States, if they're and I hate bringing politics into this, but far right, they're like, okay, well, Europe socialized. The U.S. is socialized too. Every country is socialized. We have some form of socialism, and we have some form of capitalism and some form of socialism in every country.
Yeah,
And
the biggest socialist organization in the world is, don't you?
what's that?
The US military.
That's true. So yeah, I mean, you have I mean, like Social Security. I mean, that's essentially what that is. The U.S. welfare system, of course, is that. But just retirement with Medicare. That's a socialized system. And, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, they have some variations of socialism. And I think the best thing is, I guess that's why I like being a traveler, because I've seen the goods and the bad of each. And there's some things that really work in other countries. And I'm like, okay, wow,
Yeah.
this is a good system they got, or what, for whatever it is.
Yeah, I think one of the things that traveling has helped me realize is uh the US is special, not in the way people normally say that. It's special because it's doing or trying to do something nobody else, at least today, is trying to do. And to my knowledge, nobody's ever really tried. And that's to have a country or government structure that mixes X number of cultures from around the world. So, when you travel to Colombia, when you travel to Argentina, they have a little bit, but not really. Um, and even Dubai, somewhat. You have one culture, one ethnicity, right? Now, Dubai is a little different; it's an international city, but that's just a city inside a country. The U.S., when you live in almost any given city in the U.S., right? There are Asian people, there are Latin people, there are Eastern European. In the bigger cities, you're going to have like a Chinatown. There may be a little, I don't know, Romania. There might be a little Havana, whatever, right? I think it's something I took for granted when I lived in the US because you don't really have that in other places. It might be little, and there might be a town here or there that has that, but you're not going to consistently have that. And so I think it's easier in other countries to institute some things because you have a shared culture, you have a shared um, background, right? US, it's tough because you got to convince people from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different cultures to get behind whatever you're trying to do. That's hard. Um, you know, I think, and it is great to have that. And it's something I've noticed being away, having that mixing bowl of different cultures and foods and people is awesome.
Yeah.
Other countries do things well. I don't think anybody has the complete 100% right answer, but that's definitely something unique about the US that I've seen that is definitely a double-edged sword, right? There's some things you can do when you've got all those people mixed in together, you can't do any other way. But there's also some things that are a lot tougher to do that are much easier in other countries because there's really only one type of person.
Yeah. And that being said, I've been here in Europe for the past month, and I've been in Paris. I've been Germany, France, the Netherlands, and now Spain. And I think I feel like Europe is more. As kids, we were told the U.S. is the melting pot, and I don't know. I feel like Europe is more of the melting pot than the U.S. You get on a metro or something, and you're like, there's so many different ethnicities on that metro, and I like people watching, so I'm fascinated to watch each of them, and because I enjoy those different cultures um and just seeing how the people do things differently. But my gosh, there's so many cultures, different cultures. I feel like it's I mean, yeah, if you go to like, New York City is or Los Angeles, you're gonna see, I think, more of those cultures in the US. But in a normal city like, in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh, Greensboro, um, or like at so, you're originally from the Northern Virginia area, and you know, you're gonna see some of them, but yeah, you get to DC, you get to see a lot more. But yeah, I feel like Europe is definitely the melting pot of the world.
Yeah, I think that's more recent though, right? They've had a lot of migration. Um, People have mixed feelings about that over there.
They do.
The
I thought the first time I went to Europe was pre 9/11, and I literally went that year, but it was in I want to say March or April, May, something like that. And it was like that then. Um, it was the euro hadn't France was still in the French franc. The euro hadn't been implemented yet. I don't think it got implemented until October of that year. Um, and so it was a melting pot then. That was the first thing I noticed. I was like, wow, there's all these different cultures here. This is so cool.
yeah, yeah.
So that was my big notice there. But yeah, you're right. There is some contention, amongst some Europeans over that. Um, I uh, Brexit was possibly over a good part of that as well. So yeah, it's I think you have good people and bad people here in the world. So
Well, the US had figured it out for a while. Again, people have different feelings on whether how that's going right now. But I mean, maybe they'll have to take some lessons from the US. Because yeah, Europe's a big melting pot, but even lesser known, I think, amongst the general public is there are plenty of cities where different cultures have settled, and you never hear about them because it's life is life goes on. So like Dearborn, Michigan, I think it's very Indian now, whereas 60s, 70s, um, you would have never thought Dearborn, Michigan would be Indian.
yeah.
There's a town, I forgot the name of it, but it's an hour or two drive outside of Atlanta. It's mostly Portuguese. It's Brazilian. A friend of mine would get me, he'd go to church out there and go to get me Guaraná soda, which was delicious, but will have you up until 4 in the morning. Um,
So
and
it must be more than Mountain Dew.
Oh yeah, yeah, Mountain Dew's Mountain Dew's
Amateur.
yeah, it's chamomile tea compared to guarana. And it doesn't taste nearly as good. But eat in the major cities, you'll have your Chinatown, your Little Italy, whatever. But even, outside there, you have different cultures, different ethnicities that have settled different parts of the US. And somehow we made it work.
Well, you go
Um,
back 200 plus years ago. Well, the US is really New Europe. Unless you're a
yeah.
Native American Indian, you're not from the United States originally. And that being said, actually, um, I did my 23andMe and my ancestry DNA.
Mhm.
The ancestry, I mailed them both in at the exact same time, and 23andMe has already given me my results. Ancestry.com still says they haven't received it, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But I was I was curious. Hungary has it's the only country in the world where you can go back up to 1,000 years to find ancestors. I don't know if you know that. I was
Wow.
like curious. I'm like thinking, gosh, 1,000 years. I gotta have some Hungarian ancestry, and I don't. um, but mine is all let's see here. 98.7 is 98.7% Northwestern Europe. Uh, it says 65.2% is British and Irish. And it gives you the regions, like basically the regions in the UK are actually in Scotland and Wales. And then also it says let's see here, what else? And then it breaks down 31.1% is Switzerland and Germany, and it gives the regions in Switzerland, four different regions in Switzerland and seven different regions in Germany. And then this is the interesting one. I'm I had to look up. Do you know what Anatolian is?
Nope.
I didn't either. I had to look it up. It's apparently like the Turkish region years ago, but I'm 1% Anatolian, which is Northern West Asian, and 0.2% North African, which is from like the Morocco area. So it was fascinating to see all that. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's
I have my summary from 23andMe. My countries of ancestry are Jamaica, Guyana, Germany, Nigeria, and United Kingdom. So a little German, a little English, a little Nigerian, and
in
that
the
makes us up
United
equal to me
Kingdom. What
apparently.
what parts what parts
I
of the
don't know,
United Kingdom?
it just says UK. I only have like my summary pulled up.
Okay. Yeah, mine broke it down. Let me see here. Mine broke it down to like the United Kingdom was gosh, it gave 10 different regions for that. Belfast, Glasgow, Swansea, Cumbria, Greater London, Merseyside, Cardiff, which is Wales, Car Carmarthenshire, wherever that is, Gwynedd, which would probably be Wales, and Tyne and Wear. I'm not sure what that is, but and then of course 9 different regions in Ireland, and so yeah, that was cool. So we've joked that we probably have to have some sort of because we have so many similarities that we so maybe the German connection or the UK
Yeah,
connection.
it's from one of those branches for sure. Uh, I think I don't know if I mentioned it, but I took my genome from my 23andMe results, I guess my raw genetic data, and I plugged it into Chat GPT to ask questions of my genes, which to
That's
me
cool.
was mind blowing. Yeah, I mean, you take the raw data, you can upload it. I'm sure there's somebody watching that's a privacy um, fanatic who's asking, why would you do that? But you can do it, and then you can literally ask questions. And do I have the marker for obesity, or do I have the marker for this, that, the other? Okay, which markers are they? And it'll tell you. It's pretty cool.
Okay. Well, now you've got me interested. Now I want to try this. Yeah, because
Yeah.
23andMe does tell you some health things like what are you genetically, um, you know, like it had some things for me like are you genetically asleep, like sleep insomnia? Is that a genetic possibility or whatever? So it had various things, and I didn't subscribe to the premium for that yet. So there's like they have all these teasers for me. So now you got me curious if I need that, if Chat GPT will just tell me.
Well, so the reason I did it is because I was looking at some article and they said they had found a genetic marker for something. Let's say diabetes. And I was like, I wonder. And so I got the the raw data, and I asked GPT, hey, can you read raw genetic data? And it said yes. I was like, all right. So I uploaded the file and I asked it to search and tell me if that person had that genetic marker. And it found it right away. So I was like, wow. And so, of course, I went to Google Scholar and then looked up other genetic markers that, maybe been found, start asking questions. It would be a fun project to, maybe do like a bot or a script just to, like an RSS feed or something of scientific papers. And as people find new markers for in genes, just compare it to your genetics and tell you when new genetic markers are found and what they mean.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, for me, it was funny. It gave me a list of people who would be relatives that have actually done the 23andMe, and it said you have a I'm trying to remember what it classified. It said she was a sister or something to me,
Mhm.
and DNA relatives. Let's see here. Uh, I'm trying to remember what it actually. I've updated it and told it differently, but said she was like basically my sister. Um, yeah, let's see here. It said she was like basically my sister or something, and I said no, that it's actually this is my aunt. It's my mom's sister. So it's a little off there, but I mean, I guess it did it based on how much, the quantity of DNA similarities. So, and it's
Yeah.
funny that it picked her out over my mom's like one of seven, and it picked her out of all of them. And so,
I wonder how so recently, within the last few years, genetic um, modification has become a reality. I wonder how that'll affect 23andMe and family trees, right? Because as people are able to modify more and more, there are more gene therapies. How do you keep track of family trees? I guess maybe the old-fashioned way, but I wonder what that'll do for genetic testing.
yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely something I'm curious about as it becomes more widespread and available. Because there are so many questions around it, right? Some people don't think you're playing God. Some people are cautious, rightfully so. Um, but I mean, it's here and people are doing it, so it's gonna be more and more widespread. So yeah, it's gonna be I think it's an interesting technology that most people aren't aware of that is going to have a big effect on things. Um,
Yeah, I could
so
see
it's
that.
always in the back of my head.
Well, it's like you and I've talked about AI. AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So there's I've seen some memes that say stuff like, "Are you if you're not using AI, you're missing out on it helping you with your job."
Yeah,
Or if you think AI is going to take your job, no, the person who's using AI is going to take your job. and and so um it's just it's the current technology. So um there's always going to be new things. uh, when I was in high school, DNA was just really starting to come out.
mm,
um And so they had, it really wasn't what it is today. And it's, and of course, look at what it's done for people. I mean, there's people who've been in prison for crimes they didn't commit, and DNA has gotten them out of prison and gotten them their lives back, albeit um, their life will never be what it could have been because of that time in prison. But at least it did, you you know, basically fix them from being murdered on death row or whatever,
Yeah.
so it's like I feel like, you know, there's always going to be new technologies, whether they're in healthcare, whether they're science, whatever, that are.
And I think AI is really the first time I've personally seen the divide between early adopters, or to such an extreme, between early adopters and the general public. Because I used AI literally multiple times a day.
Yeah, I do too.
But recently, I talked to people that aren't in tech, and it was a sizable group. We were watching the Copa America finals. So there were, of course, Colombians there, and then there were some guys, actually a couple of pilots um, from out of town. So we were sitting talking during halftime, and we were talking about AI, and I was floored at how little the average person at the table is using AI. Very, very little. And then I was also floored at how much they didn't understand about the capabilities. Like when I was talking to the pilots, I explained to them that, you can have it do your flight plan for you. Definitely check it. But they were like, no way. And I said, yeah, watch this. And I, pulled up ChatGPT and I said, can you give me a IFR flight plan from Miami to New York, JFK, using common waypoints, and give me the weather um, at both the arrival and departure airport. Give me the METAR, and then give me the weather forecast along the way. Um, and sure enough, it just spit it all out. Gave me the route of flight, gave me the weather at Miami and JFK, and then the TAF forecast along the way. And then I went a step farther and I said, do it for a PC-12 and give me the time en route, assuming, average cruise speed, and give me the density altitude and the pressure altitude. And it just spit it all out. And they were like, what? Like, you would have thought that I was an alien. They had no idea. Right. And so now I guarantee those guys, well, they work for an airline, so they're not doing their own flight planning, but they're at least double checking it with AI and then themselves, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, most people don't understand the capabilities. I think they're treating it like a Siri on steroids instead of an actual
It's
AI.
I think the best way that I can describe it, because like where I had never thought about doing the flight plan that way, but in reality, yeah, it knows everything. The best way I can describe it is, Google has read. When I say Google, I don't mean Google's AI, I mean Google's search.
Mhm.
Google's search has read the internet, and that's how it's able to give you search results. If you search for something, it gives you the results based on it has indexed the entire web. Well, so has ChatGPT. The only difference is it can actually tell you what it found. And it can actually kind of converse back with you, like almost like it's a human. And so like I ask it questions all the time on stuff like, okay, what's this? And of course I get the answer back. And I can even, if it's a topic that I'm not familiar with, and I can tell it, give it back to me as if you're telling a sixth grader. And,
Mhm.
that way it dumbs it down for me, because it might be something I'm just not familiar with. Like if it's on, some sort of healthcare issue or something, and I'm not a doctor. So, um, yeah, and actually I literally just asked it something, well, about 2 or 3 months ago, ChatGPT was down for like 8 hours.
Mhm.
And everybody in my office was like, is ChatGPT down for you? And I'm like, yeah. And it's like everybody was like jonesing, it was like it lets you realize that it has become a new tool. It's like a computer, I mean, imagine people years ago when they were using typewriters and all of a sudden some people had computers,
Yeah.
and it's like um you know the computer was the cool thing. And if you were using it, it was so much better than the typewriter. Well, I think the same is true of this. And yeah, what was it I asked? I've asked so many fun things here recently. Some I probably shouldn't even say on here because but um let's see here. What's one that's worthy of so I have a rental car in Europe, and it's telling me, instead of telling me my miles per gallon, it's telling me how many liters I get per hour. Or
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. How many liters I get per 100 kilometers.
Mhm.
And, as Americans, I understand the metric system really well because I've lived outside the US for a while. I know that a kilo is 2.205 pounds. A kilometer is 0.625 roughly um, miles. But I just figured, let it do the math on it. And so I said, I told it what my car was saying on its fuel efficiency, and it came back with telling me I was getting like 38 miles to the gallon, which I liked. The there's two Aldis. The Aldi grocery store.
Mhm.
There's two Aldis, and I don't know. Do you know the story behind Puma and Adidas? So
Vaguely.
Puma and Adidas were two brothers in Germany, and they were with Adidas, and one of them this was back during World War II. One was pro-Nazi, and the other one wasn't. And so, and if I'm not, and I may have this wrong, but I don't think, I think I've got it right. I think this is correct. Adidas was the pro-Nazi, and the guy that his brother that left to create his own shoe company. They're in the same city, by the way. That
Huh.
created Puma was anti-Nazi. And
Mhm.
so I was wondering, was that the same of Aldi? Because I knew that the family, basically the parents, passed it down to the two sons. And those two sons, I don't know if, I know one of them is dead. The other one might be dead as well now because they were really, they'd be the one that died. I want to say he's been dead for 6 or 7 years, and he was in his late 80s. So it gives you a time stamp on them. I was like, so I asked ChatGPT, why did the Aldi brothers split Aldi? Because there's Aldi Nord and Aldi Sud. And so half the Aldis throughout Europe are owned by one, and the other half are owned, and it's regional. So like the ones in France are owned by one of those. I couldn't tell you which, but and the ones in Spain are owned by one. And the same thing is true of the United States. All the Aldis in the United States are actually owned by one of those brothers.
Okay.
And so the other brother ended up buying out Trader Joe's. And so basically, Trader Joe's and Aldi are technically were the two brothers. I thought maybe it was because of their age. I thought maybe it was because of one was pro-Nazi, one was anti-Nazi, but it wasn't. It was so stupid. One wanted to sell cigarettes, and the other one didn't.
That's it?
Yeah, but and after Chat GPT told me this, I thought, well, let me go verify that. So I Googled it, and sure enough, that was it. And so I use Chat GPT like I just ask it curious questions all the time, and of course I ask it real stuff too. Uh, what's just different. if I'm working on a project, I'll ask it something related to that project. It knows the answer. It's spot on every time.
Mm.
So yeah, I think you and I both embrace the AI because it helps us with our jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. So with, even though ChatGPT is good, I've definitely noticed a difference with some of the other models. Like I think Claude is smarter than, at this point, smarter than ChatGPT, but it doesn't have quite the same feature set that ChatGPT does. Um, I think it's going to be interesting because, to my knowledge and my experience, I think AI is the fastest developing technology I've ever experienced. Like it's developing faster than the internet, electric cars, blockchain. It's just, it seems like every month there is something new, significantly new, that happens
Yeah.
with AI, and it's incredible. Um, and I think there's also more possibilities. Like it's such a Swiss Army knife. Whether I need advice for making mead, or I need a list of healthy meals using only ingredients found at Joe's right before I'm walking into Trader Joe. You can, I think anything knowledge based you can do with AI,
So
which is
that's
incredible.
that's funny that you said that because this is why this is frustrating with you and me because one of the questions I asked it yesterday was so Lidl, which is a competitor to Aldi, it's
Mhm.
another German grocery store. Um, I've stopped into Lidl's many times since I've been in Europe. Just go get uh like a lunch, and the lunches have been incredible. Like I've just gotten like today I got a salad. The salad was fantastic. Was €2. Um, and I've had the bread, they have all the fantastic, artisanal bread um and I've had just I've had sandwiches and stuff from there. And so I asked ChatGPT about what if I created a Lidl diet plan? Could I
Yeah.
lose weight? And what would be the limits? Because Lidl and like Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's was famous for $2 chuck, which eventually became $3 chuck, which went on to become $4 chuck, and I think it's like 4.50 now a bottle. Um, in Europe, you can still buy a €2. A euro is almost the same as a dollar. So I don't know, maybe what, $1.10 out right now. Um, so basically you can still get €2 wine there. And in fact, I just saw a 150, $1.50 or $1.50, 150 euro today at one of them. And when I was getting my salad. And so I asked ChatGPT, I'm like, what if I created a Lidl diet plan? And what would be the rules? Would it be, I could only have a certain portion, or would it be a certain euro amount, or and could I have wine with this? And and lose weight. And it came back with the meal plan for me. And it was a really good meal plan. And actually, and it looks really tasty. I mean, and it's basically, it's fantastic that it can come back in a matter of seconds with the answer to your question, and that it's usually spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. From meal plans to flight plans, it's
Flight playing
it's
still
incredible.
gets. I hadn't thought of that one.
Yeah, it's nice because, I mean, you definitely want to check it. But yeah, just to have a flight plan before you even open up the map is great. Where you just plug it into for flight, and then just check the weather and the the altitude calculations and fuel,
Yeah.
kind of all set.
I feel like if you're not flying for an airline, you're using for flights. So
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's but I can see how it would be a double-edged sword. But I also see how, you know, after that conversation with friends, I started to stop, like, try and think why more people weren't using it. And I think it's because we've trained ourselves to have very non-specific communication, um, a very short communication. And so I think even in the way that people think, um, they're thinking in shorter bursts. And so, that doesn't work well with AI. When you want to write a prompt, you want to be very specific. Um, and I think, for some people, I think it would be tough to adapt because they're used to speaking in very short bursts and being very non-specific. Um, but you can give AI multi-step um, instructions. You can be very specific and get great results. But I think people have to adjust how they communicate, and I think that'll be tough for some people because it's
yeah,
very different than the way we're communicating today with text and even email. Um, I think the only thing that maybe is long form communication anymore is maybe a podcast.
that's true. But I also think that you and me are no Joe Rogans. I don't think we can get people to listen to us for 4 hours.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out something. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the technology develops. I mean, it's for people in the know, it already affects everything. And like you said, what you just said, I think is right. If it's not a question of if, but when AI affects your job, and it's not AI is going to take your job, it's the person that knows how to use it, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's in that way it's like the internet. Some people didn't like the internet when it first became widespread. That's nice. They were left behind. So
They
the same
were.
thing is
Yeah.
definitely going to happen here because you can't compete.
Well, it's like, the day that when I mentioned that ChatGPT was down for several hours one day, you know, so I grew up in the 80s when everybody had a landline phone. Nobody had cell phones yet.
Mhm.
And we lived just fine with a landline phone. If you weren't at home, there was two options. It either just rang and rang and rang, or an answering machine picked up with a cassette tape in it.
Mhm.
And so, um, and that was that era, and people survived just fine without cellular phones. However, you know, later came, just flip phones, well, if you remember the old Motorola Executone, the one that was like a brick, you had to hold it this, it's so big.
No,
Um,
wow.
and but then then Nokia and some of the other companies were coming out with smaller phones, and then eventually, you had the BlackBerry and the Trio, and then you started getting iPhone and other smartphones, and now we don't feel like we can live without those phones.
Yeah,
It's we did just fine without having a phone with us 24 hours a day, but now we can't. And I feel like, at least for me, ChatGPT has kind of filled that spot for me, or AI, because I like Claude as well. Um, I feel like, you know it's almost like a personal assistant. Um,
it definitely is.
well,
It definitely is.
a good president has a good cabinet. The idea is you pick cabinet members that are smarter than you.
Mhm.
And so that way, you just ask that cabinet member for whatever category that you need. And I feel like that's ChatGPT or Claude, uh that they're your assistant that actually is smarter than you. And so, yeah, that's how I see it. And I feel like, I honestly, if they were to take it away now, I would be like, I would cry.
Well, I've been doing a lot of research with AI swarms, and I can definitely see a future where everybody gets to have their own cabinet, right? So, I mean, I think for sure everybody is going to have a personal AI assistant. Um, I mean, for me, that's kind of what ChatGPT is right now. It just doesn't have access to my personal data, right? But once you figure out
Yeah.
the privacy and security, whether that's a secure AI in the cloud or it's onboard AI on your phone, whatever that looks like, everybody's going to have a personal AI assistant. But I think it's even more valuable to have, like you said, a your own cabinet, right? Like, what if on your phone you had a assistant, a psychologist, a doctor, and business and financial advisor, all always ready to discuss things with you and give you different perspectives on a certain situation. People will make better decisions. The people that have that are much different people than what we see today, and I think they're much better off. Um, and it's something like that. Even 6, 7 years ago was science fiction. Now it's like that's not a if, that's a when, and not like a when
Yeah.
like 20 years, 10 years, like 5 years, if that, maybe three.
Well, it's funny that you said that about the cabinet members for the AI. I had a contract that I had. I needed to rewrite one section, and so I just gave that section AI, and I told it what I needed it, to refer to. I just gave it the overview, as pilots, the 30,000 foot overview of the changes I wanted. I
Mhm.
wasn't super specific. I just told it what I wanted, and of course it spits it back quickly. I basically update the contract and then I send it to my attorney to look at. And I hope he doesn't see this because he doesn't know that I did that. And so and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's perfect." But the thing is, he read it. He never charged me because he just literally had to read this one section and didn't charge me because it didn't take him more than a minute to look at it. And had I asked him to rewrite that section, I would have probably paid $400 for that.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, and only that, I would have had to have waited for a week to get it from him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I waited 24 hours for him to read it, so that was quicker. But if I'd asked him to rewrite it, that would have definitely taken a week. So um yeah, hopefully he doesn't see this because
I've definitely used
but
it for legal contracts, and it's the same basic process. Um, have it write something and then have it checked over by a human attorney, and it's honestly, one legal contract or legal document, and it's basically paid for itself, right? Because it's $20 a month.
yep.
It's 260 or 240, I'm sorry. And yeah, as long as it saves you more than $240, it's definitely save more than that. So,
Absolutely. Well, in addition to that, I uploaded I had a physical, and I did a video on this. Um I had a physical done in Bogota, and back in, I want to say, I think December.
mhm.
And uh my video actually compares the I was amazed at the Colombian healthcare. And actually, by the way, as of this year, Colombia surpasses the United States on healthcare.
Oh,
Um,
really?
but in December, when I had this done, it was actually my experience. That's why I did the video, because it was my experience with the Colombian healthcare was like, oh my gosh, this is so much more efficient than the US.
Hmm.
Um, but I got my results. I'm used to, like, when you go give blood for to your doctor for your physical,
Hmm.
it usually takes them a couple of days to get it. I literally gave my blood that morning, and by noon, I had the results from it. And
Wow.
so I uploaded those results to ChatGPT because I wanted it to tell me about them. And of course, it gave me a breakdown. It told me all the goods and the bads of everything. And And I was like, I was just impressed. And if I'd had to pay a doctor for that, that would have cost me more than $240. And I feel like I feel like every maybe not every day, but I feel like at least every month I get $240 worth. And every month only costs $20. You know, you're the $240 of the example you gave is for a 12 months payment. I feel like I get a 12-month payment of value every month.
Mhm.
And and again, I hope ChatGPT, you know, I hope that Sam Altman or whoever doesn't watch this because I don't want them to raise the price. I'm cool with $20 a month.
Well, I think we've covered quite a bit.
We did. So I think that in the future, some of the things that I think people can expect from us is probably more AI, crypto, um, you know,
Genetics and travel.
yeah, genetics and travel. Yeah, because yeah, you and I've talked about longevity and stuff. So yeah, I think that all of those things will be on our future plate. So so as always, it's always great talking with you, and I'm glad that we got to do this in front of you know, hopefully a bunch of people will see this, and we'll just keep producing some of this stuff.
Yep. Yeah, always a pleasure, Matt.
Uh,
Thanks for putting this together.
I'm 7 hours ahead of you, so yeah, so I would say have a good afternoon.
Yeah. Still
So
got some work to do before the weekend.
yeah, me as well. So take care, and we'll talk the next time.
All right. Thanks, Matt.